All right, so hello everyone and welcome back to Strategy Sunday. Uh, yeah, well, 2 days late again. This will probably not stop. Well, yeah, we're back with volume 21 now that the Witcher characters are out. We're taking a look at Ciri. Um, yeah, let's just jump right into it. I already wasted enough of your time waiting the last 2 days. About the basic stats. Basic as always. Ciri herself is a 15 health melee character. She has Ihuaraquax as her melee sidekick with 7 health, and they are both move 2. So 15 health is quite nice to have as a melee fighter. That's slightly above average. 7 health sidekick is also quite good for body blocking. Um, Usually means that the unicorn will at least tank one attack before actually dying. Um, Move 2 is a bit sad, but your boosts are generally good enough. Plus, having 7 health sidekick means you have a good amount of board control. Also, you only have 11 unique cards, so that makes your deck quite consistent on its own. Um, so yeah, there's not really much to complain about. You also have like a 22 total combined health pool, which is actually a lot, and so since you have healing, that can be even more. So yeah, there's not much to talk about on the basic stuff here. So let's just go right into the character ability, which is Uncontainable Power. Effects on series cards cannot be cancelled if you have 7 source. Now, how that funny little bubble there works. Some of series cards may have the source symbol on them, which is exactly this little bubble that you see there next to the character ability. Um, those cards resolve their effects based on how many other cards with a source symbol are in your discard pile. So basically, this one says once you have 7 source symbols in your discard pile, you can't be cancelled anymore, which is of course insanely huge. So what you'll usually do is kind of like Sinbad, just keep track of your source, like he keeps track of his voyages, how you place them. You don't spend them in any way or whatever. Once you just have them in your discard, you resolve effects based on how many you have there. Now, this ability, of course, is very strong since, well, source effects become stronger over time, usually, and not being able to cancel them while they are basically at their best, at their full power, just yeah, hurts, and that's great. Um, Also, this forces your opponent to play feints early because later they will be useless, which is again great. And since you kind of have this ramp up mechanic, the opponent will usually try to pressure you early, just to get some good damage in before you actually are uncancelable, before you get your good effects or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic of Ciri, just due to this ability and how her source stuff works. But to actually go into further detail, yeah, oh lord, my phone just fell over. Woohoo! Um, to go into further detail into this, we'll have to take a look at the cards. And first one, we have Channel the Source. Now, as you see, all of these card images will be blurred with a watermark, just due to restoration games only giving us these blurred cards also for competitive play, which I don't mind at all. They still do what we want them to do, basically having them online to be played as. But yeah, we don't have high resolution images, so yeah, that will probably be there for the next few guys, since we'll probably look at a few other Witcher characters next. So we have Channel the Source. It's a 2-value attack for Ciri only. You have a boost value of 3 copies, and it says during combat, you may discard any amount of source cards from your hand. Add +2 to this card's value for each source card you discarded. Now, 2-value attacks on their own are usually played for their effects or just as bait. This one can be kind of both. I mean, discarding source cards usually is not very good for you, since they each are so powerful later with their effect that their value is just a lot higher than just +2 to an attack when you actually play them. But it can be a viable strat at the start of the game to get some early source into discard. Maybe like you have some not so great source cards that you maybe can afford to lose at the start. You dump 3 of them in here, you get an 8-value attack, and you already have 3 source, so your other important cards are already online. That can work. Plus, since you're not really scary at all at the start, this can be a decent surprise slap because the opponent won't really defend that high against Ciri at the start of the game, so that's good. Otherwise, this can also be a decent finisher for lethals since it's technically your highest attack possible. I think the highest I've got it to was a 12, which definitely can catch an opponent off guard, no matter at which time. So, yeah, the threat of this card can still be a good thing, but otherwise you mostly use this as bait or just for boosting since it's a 3 boost. Then we get to your actual big smack card, which is Line Cover of Cintra. It's another 2 value attack with a boost value of 2 this time, 3 copies. It says during combat, if you have 1 source, this card's value is 4 instead. If you have 5 swords, this card's value is 7 instead. Now, again, 2 value attacks on their own, usually bait or for effects. This one can either bump to a 4 or a 7, depending on how much source you currently have, and actually, this one basically can be used at no matter which time, kinda. Um, Often this is still useful at one source, since it's kind of like your only card that already gets benefits there. And I mean, 4 value attacks aren't bad. Plus, you can catch the opponents off guard because, again, they don't want to defend that high early. So having some force to slap them with early is quite nice. Also, you can often just afford to use at least one of these early just to bump up your source overall. One of the best chains I have found is playing one card basically off effect and attacking with this, so you get the second one and you already get a benefit on this. Then defending with another card that we'll get to, which requires 2 source and defense, and you have 3, and 3 is like one of your first magical numbers. It's usually 3, 5, and 7 that are pretty important to you. So yeah, I would say usually you can either boost or attack with one of these early and then play the other twos as sevens, which of course, even if you play all 3 of these early, it's not that bad. It's still 3/4, just that, yeah, sevens are big smacks. So yeah, pretty great card and pretty versatile even for a big slap. I like it. And then we get to one of the unicorn only cards. It's Bane of the Ain LA. I have no clue if I pronounced that right. I haven't played or watched Witcher at all. I have no clue. It's a 4 value attack for the unicorn only. 4 value boost, and you have 3 copies. It says after combat, move the unicorn up to 4 spaces. He may move through opposing fighters, then deal 1 damage to an opposing fighter he moved through. Now, 4 value attacks on their own are good. Well, average block value is 3, so you're likely to deal at least 1 damage 50% of the time. This has a similar effect to Stallion Charge from Yenenga, but you only deal damage to 1 opposing fighter and not each one you move through. Also, no matter how often you move through an opposing fighter, it will still only deal 1 damage. So, technically, this can act as a 4 value attack, or get rid of 1 health sidekicks, or just be a 5 onto the opponent, depending on how you use this. It's definitely quite the useful card, and you usually want to play at least one of these while the unicorn is still alive, but it's not really a reason for you to defend the unicorn just because this card is so powerful. Nah, I'd say it's quite nice to have these early because there are some good slaps. Um, but since they're also quite predictable, since the unicorn can only attack with two things, yeah, they usually get blocked quite well, but it's great to get rid of 1 health sidekicks. It's good to get some early ping damage, and yeah, but it's not really that big of a deal if you don't get them. Then we get to Blink, which is a 4 value versatile for Ciri with a boost value of 1, 3 copies. It says after combat, move Ciri up to 3 spaces she may move through opposing fighters. Now, 4 value versatiles are great. That's a max value block, right? That's one of the most common described ways of having a great block, depending on like if the opponent has some 4 value, if you want the combat effect or whatever. Usually these blocks are the things that prevent the cool stuff. So that's great. Also, this is a combo breaker, since you can just move yourself up to 3 spaces and even move through opposing fighters. So this is kind of just skirmish plus. The only downside would be that you're not able to move the opposing fighter. Although that's not often needed that much. Like the difference isn't that high. But this is by far your most consistent block and helps you to not take too much damage in the early game. Because of course, no matter how much source you have, this will still be a 4 at the start, which is great. It can also enable you to escape pins or just move towards range fighters. If they came in and attacked you from range, you can play this, move up to them, and then attack them first action. So you kind of get a double attack there. Um, so very versatile card, and you can even attack with this early. If you don't have that much source, it's sort of print 4, and then you can kite the opponent, moving 3 spaces away if they are melee and move through, they'll have to boost to get to you. So yeah, really, really good card. Extremely solid. Many ways you can use it. I really love it. And then we get to Pushed to the Brink. It's a 3-value versatile. It's one of your source cards. It has a boost value of 2. 3 copies, it says after combat. If you have 2 source in this card, deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter. And if you have 7 source in this card, deal 2 damage to an opposing fighter within 3 spaces of Ciri. Now, 3-value versatiles on their own are good. The source effects, I mean, they're kind of the worst ones compared to the rest of your deck. This is also the other card that I told you about before when we talked about Cintra. Like, you usually mull for this card so you can play it early because it's kind of like the most useless, I guess, source effects. You don't really care that much if you lose these early, since later at 7 source you just have better stuff to actually throw on offense or defense. Um, so you don't really mind that much, just playing a blank 3 block at the start of the game. Then attack with Cintra with 1 source, then you have 2. Can play this on defense again, you get the 1 ping, which is quite nice. And then you have your 3, and that's where you can really get started. Also, often the first effect is even better than the second one, just because with the first one you can just guarantee deal 1 damage to the opponent, especially if they want to have sidekick. That's quite useful. Whereas with the second effect, if they are ranged or you were attacking with this and they have some kind of movement effect, the effect might not even trigger. So yeah, I prefer to use this card very early. I want to mull for it usually each time. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this card, but it's nice to have some slightly weaker source cards, just to don't feel as bad if you play them early. Okay, next we have Zireael. Okay, yeah, I'll just stop pretending like I know how this is pronounced. Um, it's a 2-value versatile for Ciri only, source card again. Boost value of 2, 3 copies. It says during combat, if you have 3 source in your discard pile, it's a 4-value card instead. And if you have 5 source in your discard pile, well, it's a 4 instead, and your opponent discards 1 random card. Now, 2-value versatiles are okay. The 3 source effect is already quite good. I mean, it gives you another max value block. That's a total of 6 that we have now. Definitely decent. However, the 5 source effect is wow, that's huge. Random discards are some of the most powerful effects in all of Unmatched. And this one, being during combat, actually enables some fun interactions. If we're talking about like maybe attacking into Little Red's mouth or something, you do the discard first before she actually gets her after combat effect, because usually random discards that are on normal effects and don't bump up value, like ambush, I guess, um, are after combat, so they don't work on that. But yeah, this can be some funny stuff. Um, it can also, for example, if the opponent has some draw effect after combat, you can guarantee that they discard the card that they had before, if you maybe somehow know what it is, or you suspect what it is. So yeah, this can have some fun interactions. I really like it. Overall, this is probably just your best and most consistent source effect overall. If you can avoid it, try to not use this under 5 source. Just that the extra max value block and random discard is just that strong. This is one of, if not your best card in the whole deck. So yeah, avoid to discard this. There are rarely matchups where you don't want this, or where you prefer other source cards over this. So yeah, great card. Then we have the Lady of Space and Time. It's a 2-value versatile source card for Ciri. 2 boost, 2 copies. After combat, if you have 3 source, return a card from your discard pile to the top of your deck. If you have 8 source, however, you return a card from your discard pile to your hand and draw a card. Now, 2-value versatiles are okay, again. but oh lord, the 3 source effect is huge. Being able to return any card is on its own great value, but this gives you so much control over what cards you actually want to use those source effects of, and sometimes you can even use the powerful source effects again. Let's take, for example, Cintra. If you're already at 5 source, you play all 3 of them. Um, you play this, return it, play another one. Damn, that's technically 5 sevens. Or with Zireael, you can have 5 random discards and even more value blocks. Or you can just return this with itself and kinda have an infinite deck, because instead of like Battle Hardened, where you instantly return it to your hand, on 3 source it returns the card on top of your deck. So you add cards to your deck. So for example, if you start your turn with 15 cards in your deck, you attack the opponent first action with this, return the other one to the top of your deck, then maneuver. You end your turn at 15 cards, but you still attack them. So you spent your whole turn and didn't go down a deck. That's basically a super pass, and it's insane. So each time you actually get this to return another card, it's insane value. Now, which cards you return, of course, always depends on the matchup and situation. But yeah, we'll get to which ones you want more often in just a second. Because before that, I want to talk about the 8th source effect, because actually, this is often actually worse, if not even detrimental to you. Because by the time you have 8 source, you of course already played a lot of your cards, because you already have 7 cards with source symbols in your discard. So you probably not have that many cards in deck anymore. So returning the card from discard to your hand, so not adding it on top of your deck, is already not that great. Sure, you can instantly push aggression even more with a 7 or something, but you won't get the pass from it. Plus, you also draw a card. So you actually go down in deck count. So this is just kind of like basically the Unga Bunga tool at the end, where you just rush the opponent down if you play this at 8 source. So I'd usually recommend this playing at 3, but of course the sweet spot is playing the second one of these on exactly 7 source, because you won't have the 8 source effect yet, and you won't be cancelable, so this effect will just go on forever. Of course, you won't be able to do that in each game, because at some point you probably have to play a different source card. But yeah, each time you actually get this to proc, it's insane value for you, and that's why this is, again, one of her best cards. So now let's take a look at which cards you actually would want to recur with Lady of Space and Time. In D tier, those are cards that you basically never want to return. It's both the Unicorn cards, because I mean, the Unicorn will die pretty early anyways, you won't really defend it that much, so returning any of its cards is just kinda returning dead cards. Also, Channel the Source, you have 3 copies of it. Maybe you spent one early to dump in some source, but after that it's basically useless. Um, in C, Push to the Brink. I mean, it's your weakest source card, again, in my opinion. If you want auto damage, you'll just return your Scheme, which we'll get to later. If you want a decent block, you have other better options. If you want ping, you have your Scheme again. So yeah, I just think there are way better options. In B tier, those are ones that you can consider, definitely. An extra cancel with Parry, which we'll get to later, is always great, especially in matchups like, I don't know, Sinbad, maybe Yenenga or Tesla. Unicorn Ally, which will be your healing scheme, later can be a decent option, although that has some downsides, which we'll also get into later. Now, A tier, these are the cards that you definitely reasonably return a lot of times when you play Ciri. It's either a cintra, so another 7 value attack, definitely nothing you can do wrong about that. A blink, which is just like your most consistent block. If you're um, quite early, you play your first space and time on 3 source, and well, your effects aren't that great yet, so you'd like to return a blink just to have that consistent block to be able to survive a bit more, and then actually get other source effects to trigger. And then, well, We have Child of the Elderbrod, which is another scheme of yours, which we'll get to later, that deals a lot of auto damage and is a pass. So in late game, when you're just looking for guaranteed damage and passes, that's one of your best options. But I think the two cards that you recur the most are by far Lady of Space and Time itself or Zireael. That extra 4 value random discard is just insane. And of course, with Lady of Space and Time, if you know that the opponent maybe doesn't have feints, you'll just get to recur itself the whole time, and then when you actually need a different card, you can still get it because you return on top of your deck and, well, guarantee that you'll draw into the card that you want in the next maneuver. So, yeah, now we'll get to the last versatile card, which is also the last unicorn only card. It's Searching Strike. It's a 3 value versatile with a boost value of 3 copies. It says after combat, if you won the combat, you may search your deck for a source card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Now, 3 value versatiles are good. They're like your average block value. They probably won't deal any damage on attack. The effect on this one sadly doesn't really happen that often because winning with a 3 value versatile is quite rare. If you attack with it, I mean, 3 is the average block value, so you probably won't deal damage with this, so you won't win. And attack values tend to be higher than defensive values, so yeah, you'll probably take damage over this most of the time, so you, again, don't win. But when it actually triggers, I mean, you usually search for a not so useful source card that you just want to play early, like push to the brink or whatever, just to get your source ramp up, or one that you actually want the effect of right now. Um, a good option is if you already played the first Lady of Space and Time to search for the second one, so you can already start your loop sooner. Or maybe, I don't know, you definitely need defense right now and search for a Zireael or whatever. But yeah, don't expect this effect to be triggered that often, and it's still a nice boost once the unicorn is dead. Then we'll get to your only, well, blue card in the deck, which is Parry. I already talked about it on the Lady of Space and Time. It's a 3 value block for both Unicorn and Ciri with a boost value of 1, 3 copies, and it says immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. Now, 3 value blocks are good. Again, average value block. Canceling effects is great. Now, usually the downside to cancels is their low printed value. Feint has a print value of 2, so if Bigfoot comes in and attacks you with a lock, and you feint because you thought it's a shift, well, you get mega punished by taking 4 damage over the feint. So, usually, feints can be punished quite well by 4 or higher attacks, but since this is a print 3 cancel, that disadvantage kind of goes for nothing, because this is on its own already an average block value, which is also kind of like why Sherlock's Elementary is that strong. Even if you guess wrong, it's still a 3 block. So, yeah, you can't really go wrong with defending with this, most of the time at least. Sadly, this is defensive only, so you can't actually cancel on attack. So the opponent, whenever they defend, they will get their effects off, guaranteed, which can be a bad thing if we're talking about like maybe fighters with strong effects like Tesla, Red, or someone like that, or even other series technically. um, but it's not that bad that it would really like be a detriment to you as a fighter. Great card overall. Again, one of the blocks that you usually like to see early, just to be able to stall some time and get your source cards, and just very, very consistent. And then we'll get to your schemes. We'll have Child of the Elder Blood here. It's a scheme with source. It has a boost value of 2 copies, and it says if you have 4 source, deal 1 damage to each other fighter in series zone, and if you have 9 source, deal 3 damage to each other fighter in series zone. Now, this is a pass. Passes are great to have. No matter when you play this, it will be a pass, and this one can actually be played at almost any time. It will kind of always have a use. If you have this early, it's one of the cards that you can just play as a pass, even without having any effects, just to push initiative on the opponent. You'll get an additional source card in your discard pile, so they'll be a bit more scared to come to you, but they'll have to because you had a pass. So that's quite good. At 4 source, you can clear off 1 health sidekicks quite easily, or just at least make the opponent position around this scheme, so they cannot really like pin you that easily, or corral you maybe. And at 9 source, well, yeah, sure, this is the highest amount of source required for any card in your deck, but dealing 3 damage to each fighter in Series Joan, that's just an insane mega pass. That's so much auto damage. If you play 2 of these late, or maybe recur 1 or 2 with Lady, that's 9, maybe 12 auto damage later that you can't just rely on as passive without actually having to attack the opponent. It's huge value. Now, would I recommend you to recur this late game each time over something like Cintra, which is a 7 value attack and will probably still leave the 3 damage? Probably not, because if you attack with Cintra, that's still kind of like a pass because you don't draw. Plus, the opponent actually has to spend a card to defend against it. So I think that's a bit more worth. However, if you're already ahead in deck and maybe can play this as first action and maneuver boost away so you don't have to go to the opponent, then this is definitely a viable option. Also, if the opponent has kind of like some effects like the new Witcher characters tend to have with like, yeah, the value of their card is equal to its printed value or whatever that kind of stops Sintra or any other ignores whatever. Um, this is basically guaranteed damage, whereas Sintra is kind of a gamble depending on which matchup you play in. So just decide on what you want later. This is definitely not a bad option, but in most cases, I think I'd still prefer Sintra just for the damage. But yeah, then we'll get to the last one, Unicorn Ally. It's a scheme. Boost value of 2, 2 copies, and it says Ciri recovers 2 health. Now, ongoing. After each combat your fighter is in, draw 1 card. Discard this card at the end of your turn if you have 5 or more cards in your hand. Now, first of all, hey, more passes. Always cool. Recovering 2 health, great. 2 schemes of these makes for 4 health recovered total. That kind of bumps your effective health up to 19, 26 if we count the unicorn. That's a lot of health. And you have a decent amount of max value blocks and 3 value feints. So, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Now, the ongoing effect can be hit or miss. For those of you who don't know how ongoing effect works, once you play this card, it will stay in play, and after each combat, you will draw a card. And that effect will only go away once at the end of your turn you have 5 or more cards in your hand. So, early, this can be quite nice to withstand pressure because the opponent will want to attack you a lot early because your defenses won't be as great. So this is great because you can recover health and actually attack them back without being scared that much because you'll draw a card after each combat, guaranteed. Whereas later in the game, when the decks tend to get a bit lower, this can be a huge detriment because each time they come and attack you, even if you don't want to, you will have to draw a card. So they can really kind of get the Achilles effect on you where they just go for fatigue. And then you'll probably have to double maneuver a bit just to get up to that 5 hand count and discard this. So knowing when to actually play this and when to keep the effect will be key to this. I usually say early, it's basically never wrong to play this. Mid game, it depends on your opponent and the game state. If you have already a decent amount of swords, maybe like 5 and some cintras in hand, and your opponent doesn't have the most amount of draw, then yeah, you can play this and put some pressure on them. But you should definitely know when to back out and play for a bit more value. So yeah, this can be one of the most decisive cards in your deck, depending on how you play it. But it can also lead to your downfall, which is yeah, why it's such a cool card for me. But yeah, for the conclusion, I mean, if you haven't guessed, I really like Ciri. Ciri is a very versatile fighter that can choose between many different playstyles depending on the matchup and game state. You technically have 4 passes, another 2 if you recur with both ladies, and then another 2 if you actually recur passes with ladies, or even more if you just recur ladies with ladies. And yeah, recurring ladies is probably good. Oh god, oh god. Yeah, we'll stop that. Then otherwise you can go for a big slap because, well, you technically have 5 7 value attacks. Or you play for value because you have 3 random discards. Technically even more if you play lady. So yeah, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of auto damage with the Child of the Aelid Blood and technically also push to the brink. So Yeah, there's basically nothing you can't do. And I'd always recommend you to try different game plans or styles in any matchup to widen your options if the need arises, because of course, well, you won't always have the exact source effects that you want at each time, because, well, it depends on draw order, so you have to be a bit flexible. Now, since basically all of her source cards are quite strong, even if you don't get the ones that you really love to have, the other ones aren't bad. So you'll still have almost always a chance in any matchup. Overall, I'd say she's a really cool character that even beginners can pick up and try, because you can play her without much experience, just like playing for the good effects that you like. But for experienced players that exactly want to find out which effects to prioritize and what matchup, what strategy to go for, it's really rewarding to play her. She will definitely be one of my new mains, and I just love her. Now, to her card tier list. I don't think she has any D tier cards that are just bad, that you wish you wouldn't have in the deck. For C tier, I'd say Channel the Source and Searching Strike, just due to Channel of Source usually not being used that much. Maybe one early, but after that, the two others are just, well, basically wasted. Searching Strike sadly will almost never trigger, and since the Unicorn dies quite early, since it only has Searching Strike and Parry to actually defend itself, and you definitely don't want to defend the Unicorn with Parry. You only defend the Unicorn with its own cards, so you get use out of them, and if not, you just take, because the Unicorn isn't that important. So, yeah, that card also not that great, and Bane of the Air and ALA. I mean, for value attack, sure, it's nice. You'll usually play one or two, but after that, it's a dead card, so yeah. Um, Push to the brink. Again, probably your overall weakest source card. That you play early, but it can still be quite nice auto damage. Then we'll have Child of the Elder Blood, which is kind of versatile in how you use it, but the main use, of course, is the 3 auto damage, which you only get at 9th source. So if you get this early, it will usually just clump up your hand if you want to wait for the 9th source effect. So you'll just play it as a pass that does nothing. And in that case, it's kind of like around B tier, I guess. Although it can still get really good value. Then in A tier, we'll have the most of your cards because, well, your cards tend to be quite consistently good. We'll have Parry, 3 value cancel, nothing you can do wrong with that. Blink, Skirmish Plus, nothing you can do wrong about that. Um, Line cover cintra, pretty versatile, either just as 4 early on or as 7 for later. Uh, yeah, really cool. Then I'll have Unicorn Ally. Again, probably the most decisive card in your deck and how you use it. This card can win or lose you games, depending on how you use it, so it definitely has the potential to be A or either S. But I decided that the S tier is reserved for two very special cards in your deck that are just an inch above the others in regards of how strong they are, at least in my opinion, which are Lady of Space and Time and Zireael. Now, I'd say probably Lady is a bit better, just because with Lady you can recur another Zireael. So if you have the choice to discard one of them, well, probably discard Zireael, except if you really need the 4 value block right now. Lady is just so insanely useful. You can recur whatever you need in any situation. Zireael, 4 value random discard on defense or offense, it's just insanely strong. And yeah, those are top notch. Those are the ones that you usually want to prioritize. So, matchups. I mean, this tier list, of course, is also only based on personal experiences, so feel free to disagree in the comments. Also, Ciri is still new, so remember that not all matchups are by any means fully explored. Like, we've seen that with Leshen as the prime example where people thought he would be like C tier or kind of badish at the start, and then he rose and rose. And as we've tried him more, he rose even more. Be prepared for the Leshen guide. Leshen is so cool. But yeah, for Ciri, just from how I feel about her, there's only one matchup I really, really dislike, which is Tomoe. Tomoe can just put too much early pressure on you. She kind of does everything you hate. She has pretty consistent passes. She has chosen discard that can kind of just mess up your plans with the source cards. You don't have that many defenses, and Tomoe's pressure isn't that great. You like to keep your time. to take your time and kind of build up your source. But well, if you leave her zone, you take damage. And the sevens just hurt because you don't really have any way to lower the value. You'll always take 3 damage. So yeah, not great. Slightly bad. I mean, we have our usual stuff like Sherlock and Strange, and then some other really top tiers like Bigfoot. Rex isn't that great, and Houdini, although I might say that those two really depend on if you have Unicorn Ally early or not. Um, I'd say if you have Unicorn Ally starting hand, they're probably even for you, but since you can't really depend on that each time, I'd put them as slightly bad. And Leshen, yeah, we'll talk about that once we talk about Leshen. And then even, you'll see, yeah, see, Ciri is kind of even with almost everyone. It just depends on what exactly you want to do in each matchup. It's insane. Like from Unga Bunga stuff like Luke to effect stuff like Red to body blockers like Wukong to scumbags like Golden Bat. You just kind of have a chance into everyone. And fun fact, you even have a chance into Electro. That matchup is actually quite fun. Um, then the series favorite ones might have to mention Jill, I guess, and Moon Knight. Moon Knight, well, you just tank him. Like there's nothing he can do about you. Um, and once you have Unicorn Ally, he dies, kinda. Um, Jill, you just have a better value game. She cannot cancel if she is on the healing, so at some point she won't heal anymore, so she'll die, or you get your lady recursion, and yeah, woohoo. And then, I mean, the free win tier, there's nothing that should surprise you there, I guess. So let's jump into the maps. I mean, Siri doesn't really care about map that much. You like some early space or choke points where you can put the unicorn and make the opponent waste cards on it. So yeah. But however, you also like smaller maps later on, so you can be a bit more aggressive. So yeah, kind of like move for center maps with a bunch of choke points. That's what you really like. Holy shit, my English is dying. Um, that's what you really like. So yeah, top 3 maps, I would say Sunnydale. You just have that wonderful center spot that's really great to put the unicorn in and make the opponent cry because they'll have to punch through it. Plus, it's a move 4 center with decent anti-ranged spots. So yeah, Solomon's. I mean, you don't really dislike passages. You have a beefy sidekick. You can hide Ciri in the top left corner at the start against melee fighters at least, and make them go through your unicorn while you get your source cards. And then here Rod is just kind of made for you, as first you can stall some time with the doors, and then later you just rush them down on the small map. Really, really great. Other than that, if these 3 should be the exact same 3 maps that the opponent bans, I mean, something like Soho or Rex Paddock are also quite good for her. But again, you don't really care about map that much. Ciri isn't a fighter that you have to pick map for to actually make her work. So don't hesitate. There's not really a bad choice for her in any means. So yeah, thank you for watching. Feel free to write feedback, questions, or character suggestions in the comments. Planned for next time if I actually keep up the schedule because, well, yeah, study stuff. We'll see. I still have some exams coming up, but yeah, plan for next time a Leshen, who I've also fallen in love with, and then after that Yennefer and Triss. And then also on the list are, of course, the other Witcher fighters. I'll see if I actually am able to get them all done here because, of course, they're quite new. Not everyone knows how to play them yet, and I've kind of specialized on Ciri and Leshen a bit more, so I can definitely talk about them in quite some detail. Whereas with the other ones, I think the community is still figuring out what to exactly do with them. But yeah, until next time, bye bye.